The hammer rises in the gray light before dawn. It falls. Stone dust scatters across calloused fingers. The young man does not look up. He does not speak. Around him, 20 other workers are doing the same, cutting limestone for a Roman wall in a city called Sepphoris. The foreman, in Greek, a donkey somewhere down the slope. A Roman soldier at something a Greek merchant has said. No one in this quarry knows who he is. No one knows that the hands holding the chisel are the same hands that shaped the stars. No one knows that the back bent over the stone is the back the prophets had been writing about for 1,000 years. No one knows that he is 28 years old, and he has been doing this, exactly this, for 16 years. But what no one in that quarry knows is the same thing most Christians today still don't know. The silent years of Jesus were not silent. They were a sermon. And what he was doing in those years is the most important thing he ever did before the cross. This is the forgotten childhood of Jesus of Nazareth. The 30 years the Gospels almost refused to record. By the time you understand what was really happening in those years. A boy of 9 is carrying a clay jar to the well. The sun is not yet over the eastern ridge. The village is waking. A rooster crows somewhere near the synagogue. 2 old women are already at the well, lowering their buckets, talking in Aramaic about a neighbor's daughter who is to be married next month. The boy waits his turn. He says nothing. He has done this every morning since he could carry a jar. When the women finish, they look at him and smile the way old women smile at quiet boys. Mary's son. They do not say it out loud, but everyone in this village knows everyone in this village. There are maybe 300 souls in Nazareth. There is 1 well, 1 synagogue, 1 olive press, 1 baker. And every family has either fed every other family or fought with them. The boy lowers his jar. The water is cold. He pulls it up, balances it on his shoulder, and walks home. His sandals leave faint marks in the dust. The dust forgets them within an hour. This is a morning. There were 10,000 mornings just like it. The smell of hyssop drying in bunches under the eaves of every house. The clatter of grinding stones in the courtyards as women turned barley into flour. The bleat of a goat. The shofar at sunset on Friday. The taste of barley bread dipped in olive oil. The blue of techelet dye on the corner of every prayer shawl. The whispered Hebrew of the Shema rising at evening from every doorway. This was the world that raised him. Years later, his first disciple would sneer at the name of this place. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? John 1:46. The world thought it was an insult. The world did not know. The Hebrew root behind the word Nazareth is netzer. It means branch. And in Isaiah 11:1, written 700 years before the boy with the water jar was born, the prophet had said, "There shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots." The contemptible village name was the prophecy. The map the world had laughed at had been circled by God in the margins of Isaiah for 7 centuries. But before Nazareth, there was Egypt. And before Egypt, there was a king who wanted him dead. He was a toddler when the soldiers came. The Magi had ridden into Jerusalem on camels heavy with frankincense, asking openly in the streets, "Where is he that is born King of the Jews?" Matthew 2:2. And Herod the Great, the paranoid old butcher who had murdered his own wife and 3 of his own sons rather than risk a rival, heard about it. Joseph was warned in a dream. He did not wait until morning. A small house in Bethlehem, past midnight. A donkey loaded in the courtyard, hooves wrapped in cloth to muffle the sound. Mary lifting the sleeping child while Joseph stuffed a leather bag with bread, dried figs, and what little gold the Magi had left behind. The door creaked open. The street was empty. They slipped into the dark. The journey to Egypt was over 140 miles through wilderness, sand by day, cold by night, jackals in the distance. The kind of road where a family of 3 could disappear and no one would find the bones for a generation. And while they fled, Bethlehem burned. Herod, when he realized the Magi had outwitted him, ordered every male child 2 years old and under in Bethlehem and its surrounding region to be killed. Matthew 2:16. The town was small, maybe 50 children, maybe 70. In a village that size, every mother knew every child by name. Every soldier's boot on the road sounded like the end of the world. A woman heard the screaming 3 doors down and knew her son was next. A father lifted his boy and ran for the hills and was cut down in the olive grove behind his house. A mother held her child's body in her arms until the sun came up and refused to let anyone take him from her. Rachel, the prophet Jeremiah had said, was weeping for her children and would not be comforted because they were no more. And the Son of God? The reason all of this was happening? He was sleeping in his mother's arms on a road through the wilderness, drooling on her shoulder. He's so small. Mary holds him tighter as the desert wind cuts through her cloak. How can he save anyone when I can barely keep him fed? They stayed in Egypt until Herod died. Matthew tells us this fulfilled Hosea's prophecy. Out of Egypt have I called my son. Hosea 11:1. The same nation that had once enslaved Israel now sheltered Israel's Messiah. The God who had brought his people out of Egypt was bringing his son out of Egypt too. And while a king's sword struck Bethlehem, a small family disappeared into the mountains, carrying the salvation of the world in their arms. You've been told he was a carpenter. That is not what the Greek says. Matthew 13:55 calls him ho tu tektonos huios, the son of the tektōn. Mark 6:3 calls Jesus himself ho tektōn. The Greek word tektōn comes from a root that means to carve, to chisel, to mold. It does not specifically mean wood, it means builder. In a region where high-quality wood was scarce and limestone was everywhere, a tektōn spent most of his days not in a quiet workshop with sawdust on the floor, but in a quarry, cutting stone, hauling stone, shaping stone, setting it in mortar. The image we have inherited from medieval paintings, a serene man planing a board in a sunlit shop, is a fantasy. The reality was harder, dirtier, more dangerous. His shoulders were broad, his back was strong. His hands were calloused so thick that splinters could not penetrate them. His fingernails were chipped, his knees ached. His lower back hurt by the time he was 25. And 4 miles down the road, Sepphoris was rising. Have you ever lived somewhere the world considered unimportant and wondered if God could find you there? The Son of God did, for nearly 3 decades. And the city where he worked was not unimportant at all. Sepphoris, 30,000 people, a Roman theater carved into the hillside, mosaic floors imported from across the empire, a bathhouse, an aqueduct, the administrative capital of Galilee, rebuilt from the ground up by Herod Antipas during the very years Jesus was growing up. Tax collectors, Roman soldiers, Greek merchants, Aramaic-speaking Jews who pretended not to understand the foreign tongues so they wouldn't have to answer the questions. And right next door, 4 miles up a dusty hill, the village of the Branch. Dawn over the Galilean hills. A teenage Joseph and a teenage Yeshua walking the road from Nazareth, carrying leather bags of chisels and wooden mallets. They reach the construction site as the sun clears the ridge. The Roman foreman shouts in Greek. Joseph nods. Yeshua sets down his tools and picks up a square of limestone the size of a small chair. The other workers are already at it. Hammer on chisel, hammer on chisel. Dust rising in the morning air. A worker glances over at Yeshua's line of cuts and grunts.
Yeshua, your line's off.
The boy looks, adjusts, says nothing. The foreman is watching him. He works Yeshua harder than the others, not because Yeshua is lazy, because Yeshua is the best and the foreman knows it. He never says so. He just gives him the heaviest blocks and keeps walking. He was the one through whom the world was made. I spoke this stone into existence. The chisel rises again, and now I cut it for a Roman wall. And he does not stop. He does not turn the stone into bread. He does not call 10,000 angels to lift the slab. He does not say to the Roman foreman, "Do you know who I am?" He cuts the stone. He sets it. He smooths the face. He moves on to the next one. 18 years from age 12 to age 30. 18 years of 6-day work weeks. 18 years of dawn to dusk labor. 6,570 days. Every single one a choice. Every single morning, he could have stood up and revealed himself. He did not. Every single evening, he could have ended the silence. He did not. Every single Sabbath, when he read the scroll of Isaiah and saw his own face in the words, he could have spoken the line that would have stopped the synagogue dead. He did not. For 6,570 days, the Son of God chose the chisel over the throne. And later, when he stood before crowds of thousands and told them about a man who built his house upon a rock, the metaphor was not borrowed from a textbook. It came from the calluses on his own hands. When he said the kingdom is like a builder who counts the cost before laying the foundation, he knew exactly what that cost was. He had paid it. In sweat, in sleep, in years. But the hardest day of those 18 years was not a day of labor. It was a day of grief. He was 12 years old, and his mother lost him. The pilgrimage to Jerusalem was an annual ordeal for a family from Nazareth. The distance was at least 75 miles by the central route, but the central route went straight through Samaria, and most Galilean Jews would rather walk an extra 30 miles than break bread with a Samaritan. So the caravans took the long way, across the Jordan, down through Perea, back across the river near Jericho, up the steep climb to Jerusalem, 100 miles of road, 4 to 7 days of walking. The caravans were huge, hundreds of pilgrims, whole villages traveling together, men walking with men, women with women, children with whichever group their mother told them to stay near. At 12, a Jewish boy was on the threshold of religious adulthood, 1 year before his bar mitzvah, old enough to walk with the men, young enough that Mary still might have assumed he was with the women. That assumption cost her 3 days of terror. When the caravan reached its first night's stop on the road home, Mary asked the women if they had seen him. They had not. Joseph asked the men. They had not. The blood drained from her face. They turned and ran back the road they had just walked, a whole day's journey backward. Then another day searching the city, then another. 3 days. There is a particular kind of fear that only a parent knows, the fear of having lost something irreplaceable to the world. They found him in the temple courts. Read what most readers miss. Luke 2:46 says Jesus was sitting in the midst of the doctors, both hearing them and asking them questions. This is not a precocious child showing off. This is the exact posture of an advanced rabbinical student in a bet midrash. He is not lecturing, he is listening, he is asking. He is doing what every 12-year-old Jewish boy was supposed to do, but doing it at a level the elders of Israel had never seen. And Mary, exhausted and humiliated, says the words every mother has said in her own voice.
Son, why hast thou thus dealt with us?
Behold, thy father and I have sought thee sorrowing.
Luke 2:48. The boy looks at her, and he says the most theologically loaded sentence ever spoken by a child.
How is it that ye sought me?
Wist ye not that I must be about my Father's business? Luke 2:49. Most readers hear that as defiance. It is not. Did you not know? He is not rebuking her. He is opening a window. He is letting her see for one moment the secret he has been carrying alone since he was old enough to know who he was. But here is the part that overturns everything you thought this story was about. The boy who said those words then stood up, brushed the stone dust from his tunic, and went home with them. The Greek for "he went down with them and was subject unto them" in Luke 2:51 contains the verb hupotasso. It is a military word. It means to arrange under authority. It is the same word Paul uses to describe how the universe is arranged under Christ. And here, at age 12, the universe's true king is hupotasso to a peasant carpenter and a teenage girl. For 18 more years. This is the moment most teachers race past, but it is the heart of the entire silent decade. Because Jesus did not stay in the temple. He could have. He had the knowledge. He had the authority. He had the divine right. The elders were astonished by him. He could have begun his ministry that day. He did not. Not yet. He looks at his mother's tear-streaked face. They are not ready. I am not finished. And he stood up, brushed the stone dust from his tunic, and walked home with them for 18 more years. Mary kept those words in her heart, Luke says. The Greek there means she pondered them as a mother ponders an injury that has not yet stopped bleeding. But somewhere in those 18 years, a hammer fell, and a teenage boy buried his earthly father. Joseph disappears from the Bible. After the temple incident at age 12, his name vanishes. He is not at the wedding in Cana. He is not at the cross. When Jesus is on the cross, he gives his mother to the disciple John, not to Joseph. Most scholars believe Joseph died sometime during these silent years, and that Jesus, as the eldest son, became the head of the household. We do not know exactly when, we do not know exactly how, but there was a day. A small house in Nazareth, the smell of fresh-cut cypress for the burial pallet, Mary's brothers carrying the body, because in Jewish custom, the immediate family did not carry the dead. A quiet procession through narrow stone streets, the village watching from doorways. A rock-cut tomb in the hillside outside the village. A stone rolled in front. Tears that had no end. James was 8 years old, maybe 10. He kept looking at his oldest brother's face, waiting for Yeshua to say something that would fix this. Yeshua said nothing. James never forgot the silence. There at the center of it all, a young man with stone dust on his tunic and grief on his face. James and Joseph and Simon and Judas standing behind him, looking at their oldest brother now, looking at the one who would feed them, looking at the one who would protect their mother, looking at the one who knew something they did not know. I will see him again. He watches them roll the stone, but Mother does not yet know that. And he could have said it, right there, in front of the tomb. He could have spoken 3 words, and Joseph would have walked out alive. He could have given Mary back her husband. He could have ended her widowhood in a single breath. He did not. He went home. He picked up the chisel. He went back to work the next morning. Because the family needed bread. Because James was still a child. because Mary needed a son. The author of life worked overtime to support his widowed mother. The bread of heaven needed barley dough at dawn. The light of the world walked home in the dark because he had stayed late to finish a Roman wall for an extra day's wage. And every miracle he could have performed, he withheld. Every healing he could have done, he postponed. Every revelation that would have shaken Israel to its foundations, he kept locked behind his teeth for 18 years. This is the part of the Christmas story no carol sings. This is the part of the gospel no painting captures. The Son of God did not save the world by leaving heaven. He saved the world by staying on earth, by staying in the village, by staying in the workshop, by staying in the silence. The hiddenness was not preparation for the mission. The hiddenness was the mission. Every day he chose obscurity, he was choosing us. Every day he chose the chisel, he was choosing us. Every day he buried his own glory under stone dust and barley bread and a widowed mother's grief. He was choosing us. And then, one ordinary morning, he set the chisel down for the last time. But before he walked toward the river, the Father had been waiting for an exact age. The law of Moses required it, Numbers 4:3. The Levites could not enter into the public service of the tabernacle until they were 30 years old. Joseph stood before Pharaoh at 30, Genesis 41:46. David was crowned king at 30, 2 Samuel 5:4. Ezekiel received his vision of the wheels and the throne at 30, Ezekiel 1:1. The Talmud later codified what every Jewish boy already knew. At 30, a man receives strength. If Jesus had begun his ministry at 20, the elders of Israel would have called him an arrogant boy and refused to listen. If he had begun at 25, he would have been dismissed as a tradesman with delusions. But at 30, at the exact age the law required for priestly service, every legal door was open. Every cultural argument was answered. Every prophetic precedent was fulfilled before he spoke a single word. The Father had not been delaying. The Father had been waiting for the hour. And then the hour came. The Jordan River runs muddy in early spring. The water is cold from the Galilean snowmelt. The banks are crowded. A wild-eyed prophet in camel hair stands waist-deep in the current, shouting at Jerusalem,
"Repent ye, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand!"
Matthew 3:2. The crowds press in, tax collectors, soldiers, Pharisees who came to scoff and stayed to listen, fishermen from the Sea of Galilee, mothers carrying children on their hips. The line stretches up the bank and disappears into the trees. John stops preaching mid-sentence. His arm drops. The crowd does not understand why. They follow his eyes. A man is walking down the riverbank. His tunic is plain. His sandals are worn. The dust of the road from Galilee is still on his ankles. He is not famous. He is not announced. There is no procession. He is just a man stepping out of a crowd that did not know he was in it. But John knows. John, who had leapt in his mother's womb when Mary first walked through the door of his childhood home 30 years before. John, who had spent his life in the desert preparing for this moment. John, who had been telling everyone,
"He is coming! He is coming! He is coming! No, for 3 years!"
Now he is here. John's voice cracks. "I have need to be baptized of thee, and comest thou to me?" Matthew 3:14. The man says only one sentence. "Suffer it to be so now, for thus it becometh us to fulfill all righteousness. Matthew 3:15. And he steps into the water. The river is cold. The current pulls at his tunic. John's hand trembles as it touches his shoulder. Down, under. The world goes silent beneath the water. Stone dust from 16 years washes from skin that had carried it. Calluses soften in the current. The chisel marks on his knees disappear into the river of Israel. Up, air, light, and the heavens that had been closed for 400 years since the last prophet fell silent, the heavens tear open. A dove descends. A voice speaks. This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Matthew 3:17. Pleased. Stop on that word, because the cross has not happened. The miracles have not happened. The Sermon on the Mount has not happened. Lazarus is still alive. Peter is still fishing. Judas is still walking the streets of Kerioth. And the Father is already pleased. He was pleased with 30 years of obscurity. He was pleased with 16 years of stone cutting. He was pleased with the boy who walked home from the temple at 12. He was pleased with the teenager who buried his earthly father. He was pleased with the man who fed his widowed mother and never once revealed himself. The hiddenness had pleased him. What if your hidden years are not a delay? What if they are the work itself? Somewhere right now, in a room no one is watching, you are doing something faithful that no one will ever see. A prayer no one hears. A choice no one applauds. A kindness no one records. The Father sees it. The Father is pleased with it. Just as he was pleased with a young man laying stone in Sepphoris at dawn, 16 years before anyone in heaven or earth said his name out loud. Tell me your Nazareth in the comments. One word, one sentence. The place where you are hidden right now. Subscribe if you want to keep walking through the life of Christ with us. Share this with someone in their own silent year. Someone who needs to hear that the silence is not abandonment. Because the world calls them the lost years, but nothing about him was ever lost. Every hammerfall, every dawn, every silent Sabbath, every meal eaten in a small village that didn't know it held the King. He was choosing you.